Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do something unusual. We're going to start the meeting 1 minute early. I'm Frank Sweeney. I'm the deputy mayor. The mayor's away this evening, and Councilor Norton has been excused. She's not feeling very well. And so we're going to go with the crew that we have. With that said, I call this meeting to order and would ask Nathan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Now is our time for communications from the public. We're willing to take comments from any member of the public on anything that is not otherwise a public hearing this evening. Nathan.
Just figured I'd come explain myself since I sent you guys an email and it's on the, you're going to discuss it later, but Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue, president of Shelter WF, and had sent in a proposal to you all as an example of a potential ADU ordinance that could expand on kind of what we have already, because there was a judge in Gallatin County that issued an injunction against a couple of bills, SB 323 and SB 528. SB 528 is the ADU bill, and I tuned into the discussion at the end of the last meeting and was a little concerned that there was a little bit of appetite maybe for going backwards on Whitefish's current ADU ordinance, which was made to comply with that state law that now has an injunction against it for some amount of time. And that concerned us, I guess, as an organization. We don't want to see the city go backwards. You know, I think going backwards has some negative impacts in terms of staff time that could be used better doing other things rather than bringing forward another ordinance for you out of the past. I think that the laws will eventually win in court, and so you'd go back and have to come back forward again. And like I said in my email, I do think that it would get noticed by certain legislators that like to pay attention to what Whitefish is doing in Bozeman and Missoula and places like that. I'm tangentially in enough of those conversations that I think it would get noticed right away, so I think it would be a bad idea. I think this is a good time to move forward potentially if a change is desired. What I sent you was just an example of a way to potentially do that, to improve on the program that Whitefish had before to make it even better. And I verbatim copied and pasted it from a wildly successful program that I learned about when I was down speaking on a panel in San Diego at the end of November, beginning of November. And so thought it was really cool, just copied and pasted it. Understand there might need to be some tweaks in there to make it work for Whitefish, but that's what I sent you. It was just copied and pasted from a program that's been super successful. I know there might be some concern about it not being legal based on the bill that got rid of inclusionary zoning. I think that it's not inclusionary zoning, and I think it's no more illegal than the voluntary legacy homes program. If we're looking at it from a legality standpoint, I don't think that's illegal either, so I don't think that this is illegal. And I don't think that it would have a very high likelihood of being challenged either, since it would be adding a significant amount of housing and a significant amount of affordable housing. So I sent it to you just to consider it. Rather than going backwards, let's look forwards. Obviously don't have to do anything, can just leave the current ordinance in place. But if there's appetite for a change, this is a direction maybe to go that's a little bit more effective than the incentives that were in the previous iteration of Whitefish's ADU bill before it was made to comply with the state law. Those incentives didn't work very well, as evidenced by nobody coming forward and building through that program. So these incentives might be a little bit better. If there's appetite to change it, consider making it a little bit better. You can use what I sent you as a model. I think it's fine to go as is, but that's the explanation behind that, and I'm happy to answer any questions at any point in time, but I just wanted to kind of explain that.
Thanks, Nathan. Anybody else?
Good evening. I'm Kate Walker with Northwest Design Studio, 940 Spokane Avenue, Suite 3. I am hoping to speak with you this evening regarding WLP 23-32, which is currently on the agenda under communications from the planning director. I am happy to speak with you now, or if you would like to address that when Nelson speaks of it later.
I'm happy to take your comments then. It would be
Great.
more cogent and probably more helpful for the public as well as anybody else.
That's
So that
perfect. Thank you.
We'll allow you, we'll recognize you at that time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Richard. Welcome home, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, councilors. I have 3 things on my shopping list this evening, if I may. Number 1, Craig, streets. Your crews have done an absolutely amazing, incredible, phantasmagorical job of getting the snow off of our streets, and a big wahoo to that crew. Thank you very, very much. They're awesome. And there's more snow coming, so they get another shot at it. All right. That was number 1. Number 2, I brought this up at the committee that deals, or the Parks and Rec Committee I guess it was last week now, and it deals with the requirements that the city has imposed for block parties. There's nothing that builds community more than a block party, when neighbors can get together and greet and visit and chat with one another and share commonality and common concerns and things that they would like to see done, and just that sense of being neighbors. We do not have a category, really, in this city for block parties and how to administer and deal with block parties. We have a special events issue or a project, a program that we have to fill out. It goes to 11 pages. The city of Missoula, for a block party, has a total of 3 if you count the 3rd page, which is just a diagram of how you block a street. We charge for a special event $110, a city fee, and on top of that, if you happen to be, in the case that I'm most familiar with, walking down a sidewalk putting out luminarias on Christmas Eve, another $75 in park fee, and I'm not sure where that $75 comes from, or I know where it comes from, but why we impose it and to what use. So I'm here to encourage you to push city staff to re-examine the idea of an ordinance or regulation, however you want to frame it, to deal with specifically block parties. The city of Missoula, as I said, theirs is 2 pages long, as opposed to ours, which is 11, and they have virtually, depending upon the nature of the block party, no fees at all, including the mayoral grace to eliminate the need for liability insurance. So I want to encourage council to give a nudge to city staff to take another look at how we deal with specifically a block party. So if you would, I would appreciate that. And if it requires citizen input, I'm volunteering to be on a committee or a group that's going to study that. And I hope that it comes to fruition, because really, block party season is just a few months away. And I think specifically to the folks on Summers Avenue who for years had a block party and have been charged, the fees are just too high for them to have a block party anymore. And I thought it was an important part of their community for sure. And number 3, snow removal, not on our city streets, but the failure of the United States Postal Service to shovel the sidewalks on 4th and along Baker Avenue. I am in the process of preparing a petition, and I'm going to start standing outside the door of the post office to get the postmaster to shovel the sidewalk. Apparently, they don't have to shovel the sidewalk because it's a federal facility, and as such, they have not done so. But, for example, what it does is Alec, who lives at the Whitefish Manor, who's legally blind, walks to work at the Wave using his white cane. When he gets to that junction of Lupfer down to Baker, that full block, he is now forced to go into the street, and because there is parking on the second or the lower portion of that half block, he is now forced out into the street using his white cane before he can get back on the sidewalk, and the only sidewalk that gets back is where the city has plowed it, going across the bridge, and then the neighbors have plowed headed south. So anything you can do, anything the city can do to get the Postal Service to shovel the walks in a timely fashion, the same as the rest of us have to do, according to Ordinance 1722. I believe I got it right. So thank you very much for your time.
Richard, thank
Yes.
you again. Always enlightening.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not seeing anybody online wish to give public comment?
I don't think so, but I'll ask anyway.
Yeah.
Anybody who is joining us online through Teams, if you'd like to speak towards anything that is not on the agenda under a public hearing, please raise your hand or unmute your mic. We're good?
Good. I'll close public comment now and move on to communications from volunteer boards. Any volunteer boards in the audience? Not seeing any. Any from council? Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to make everyone aware that we will have our long-awaited first Community Development Board meeting this Thursday, where we will get, it starts at 5 o'clock, and we'll have a work session at the beginning, and we will be discussing our growth policy update and where we are in the process, and then we'll have a couple agenda items after that during the regular session. So the first hour will be about the growth policy, if anybody is interested.
Anybody else? Andy? Nope. I have just as a follow-on essentially to Richard. I was at the park board meeting last week when Richard presented this item. I can tell you that the park board is interested in examining our regulations and requirements for block parties in particular. And it also, it was brought to our attention that, for example, and this kind of goes into your bailiwick, Bridger, is that, for example, on Halloween, apparently Columbia Avenue is literally wall-to-wall children for 3 to 5 hours, and we allow traffic to be moving up and down there, including large trucks during that time frame. It seems to me that we ought to have a way for those kinds of activities to allow us to close the streets. In other words, the park board is certainly willing and interested in something like that. So if we, as part of our process of evaluating, if the council chooses to do so, our regulations on block parties and how we present those, that would also be something that the park board would be interested in working with anybody that wanted to do it to make that happen. So there. That being said, I think that's all we have for our volunteer boards. Next we have on our agenda is the consent agenda. Do we have any comments or a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, discussion? All those in favor? All passes unanimously. Next, we move on to our public hearings this evening. Our first, I think, is going to be Resolution 2404, a resolution to annex or incorporate within the city boundaries of the City of Whitefish by petition and consent of property owner of approximately 1.2 acres of land known as 26 East Lakeshore Court et cetera. There you go.
Good evening. Yes, so 26 East Lake Shore Court. Robert Bailey is the owner. Ads were placed in the pilot, the 27th, the 3rd. Property owners were noticed December 20th, 2023. So the property is currently in the Flathead County and is zoned R1, which is their suburban residential. And the proposed city zoning would be our WSR, our suburban residential. So one recommended condition of approval, and that is that the owners/developers must pay the annexation surcharge set forth in Resolution 24-03 as determined by the city prior to the city recording this resolution with the Flathead County Clerk and Recorder, thereby finalizing annexation of the property. So let's give some property information. It's surrounded by this property is surrounded by WSR to the south. The lake is to the west, and their county is to the north, and that is also zoned R1. A few lots along the lake have been annexed into the city. A couple properties north of there. So there is a single-family home that is under construction currently on 1.211 acre lot. Construction of the home began with the intent to connect to city sewer, but was constructed in the county. It was not subject to building inspections, and no building inspections will be conducted after the annexation. It's located near city sewer, and it's again surrounded by city to the south and west, which is the lake. Per our city annexation policy, the city should prioritize the annexation of properties that contribute to the logical growth pattern of the city by creating orderly and contiguous municipal boundaries. And then, again, the city borders the property to the west and south and is within the urban growth boundary. So sewer is available and will be required when they annex. The future land use designation is suburban, which the WSR is consistent with, and therefore it complies with the growth policy, 2007 growth policy. Staff supports this request as it complies with the growth policy and existing uses and surrounding property. The county R1 is similar to our WSR zoning. There are some differences, which I'll get into here. The minimum side yard setback in the county R1 is 10 feet. The city's WSR has a 15-foot minimum side yard setback. And the structure as drawn and constructed, it does go into what the WSR side yard setbacks would be in a few places. In a few places, it's at about 13 and 14 feet from the property line. Yep.
Question I've got as it relates to the setbacks, it appears to me that what you're saying is that the structure as it's now configured and drawn wouldn't even comply side yard setback or front yard setback in the county zoning. Is that correct? And it's clearly not going to meet our zoning.
So it would comply with the county zoning. So the county has a 10-foot side yard setback, and the building is not within that 10-yard setback. It's past it about 13 and 14 feet at different points. So it is past the 10-foot side yard setback set by the county, but it would be within our 15-foot side yard setback. So it would be non-conforming in regards to side setback if it was annexed.
If it was annexed?
Correct.
It's currently conforming in the county?
Correct.
Okay.
So section 76-2-303 MTA and section 11-7-12E Whitefish City Code provides for a joint hearing on the annexations along with the zone change and outlines three review criteria. Only one needs to be met. So A is authorized land uses comparable to the land uses authorized under the county zoning classification that applied to the property immediately before it was annexed in the city. Staff assessment is yes, the proposed WSR is comparable to County R1, and is the closest equivalent zoning. B, authorizes land uses that are consistent with the land use as approved by the Board of County Commissioners or the County Board of Adjustment. Yes, again, R1, our WSR is comparable to the County R1 and is the closest equivalent. C is be consistent with the land use and zoning recommendations for the subject areas as set forth in the growth policy. Yes, it is consistent with the suburban designation. So based on compliance with section 17-7-12E, 1A, B, and C, which is Whitefish City Code, staff recommends annexation of the subject property and zoning upon annexation of the subject property to WSR, suburban residential, upon annexation. And then again, if the city council does not approve the request to annex and apply the WSR suburban residential, the resolution of intent to annex and zone upon annexation of the property are null and void, and the property remains in the original status in Flathead County.
Any questions from council? Steve, go ahead.
Nelson, maybe I didn't hear you say it, but it appears that on page 169 of the packet that it's not just the side yard setback, it's also, does not meet the 10-foot lakeshore protection zone setback. Is that correct?
Yes, that is something I will need to pull up here for you.
Do you have a drawing of the, because we didn't get a drawing of the building in our packet with the
Yep, I
property lines on it.
apologize for that. I did get a site plan after.
Okay. Well, in your narrative, the bullet point says that the structure as drawn on the plans do not meet WSR side yard setbacks of 1 feet, nor the 10-foot lakeshore protection setback. The
Yep,
home would be non-conforming.
Well, I believe they have some like patio structures. It would be grandfathered in at this point anyway. As far as,
Grandfathered in how? They're pre-existing?
they do have a permit with the county, it just doesn't quite match what we would probably allow.
So Steve, in that instance, it would be considered a legal non-conforming use because it was already built under the county regulations as a legal use. And then once it annexes into the city, like anything else, if there's existing non-conformities, there's not much we can do about them once they come in.
So it's not the house that impedes the 10-foot lakeshore protection setback, it's an existing structure that's out there?
Well, so the county doesn't have an additional 10-foot setback outside the lakeshore protection zone like we have. We have a 20-foot lakeshore protection zone from the high water. And then we have an additional 10-foot setback where we don't allow any vertical structures. That is not something that the county has, and so anything that's built outside of city limits can build within that 10-foot setback.
So my question is it part of the new construction, or is it part of the old construction that was already there?
Oh, I don't know that.
So it would be part of the new construction that was when it was just built.
So they're building in an area that we would not allow them to build if they were already annexed into the city, is that correct?
Correct. It would be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Right now? Go ahead.
Just so I understand this correctly, this is a new house under construction?
Yes, the house, I don't think the construction has not been completed, but it is, yes, it's under construction.
And is there a septic system on this property currently?
No, they are looking to connect to the city sewer, so that's why they're annexing, is to use the city service of the sewer.
So is this an example of an attempt to skirt some of our zoning regulations by applying at this point?
I can't speak to that. It definitely,
I think the owner's rep is here, if he may be able to answer some of those questions.
Yeah, the owner's rep is online.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, evening. How you guys doing?
Tyler?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah. So with regards to the setback from the lakeshore protection zone, the only thing that's within that is hardscaping, essentially sand set patio. So the structure itself is beyond those limits.
Well, if that's the case, then it would meet our requirements because we allow something as long as it's not vertical. So we would allow hardscaping or a patio at grade.
Tyler, for the record, would you provide your name and address? Thanks.
Sure. It's Tyler Schefter, and I'm with Malkus Construction, which is at 100 Baker Avenue in Whitefish.
Do you have anything to add, or are there any questions from council at this point of Tyler or any, at this point?
I mean, I'm absolutely willing to answer any, questions you have, technical or otherwise. Some of them may, take me a day or so to get back to you by reviewing plans and everything else. But the intention for annexation was to connect to the stepped effluent system that the city provides on East Lake Shore Court. We do have space for a leach field. The preference, though, is to connect and annex into the city.
Tyler, was there any consideration of the owner of if they were always going to try to annex into the city, was there any discussion with them about the fact that they would, if they annexed into the city, that they would, their structure or their building process would in fact be in violation of several of the setbacks that would be required of the city if they were annexed in the city before construction?
That would probably be a question that I would have to involve the architect with, because I wasn't involved in the initial planning or site plan. I do know that, the original reason that it was built within the county was more of a timeline issue and timing of construction beginning prior to winter, and just avoiding a lot of the other processes involved. It's just, as you know, easier to build within the county, and there was really no reason not to at the time.
Thank you. Anything else?
Can I just add one thing, Frank?
Yes, please.
So we tried to get this at the time of Nelson's staff report, but the Tyler did provide evaluation for the project, so the annexation surcharge that we've calculated for this project is $25,000.
No,
Just so council's aware.
yeah, great, thanks.
May I ask?
Sure.
The annexation surcharge, was that passed at our last meeting? And does it need a second reading to be law?
No, it was passed by resolution, so it
Okay.
became effective immediately.
Okay.
And I will pass along just a concern, and, do with it what you will, and whether or not this is the appropriate forum for it, I don't know. There was a concern that the application for annexation was submitted on the 21st of November, and the resolution wasn't passed until January 2nd. So I don't know how that applies to grandfathering in something that had already applied.
Okay, thank you. We advertised for a public hearing, and I think I'll take any comments from the public at this time. Are there any members of the public that wish to provide comments at this time? Not seeing any. Any online?
Anybody that's online, if you'd like to speak towards this agenda item, please raise your hand or unmute your mic. I think we're good.
Good, thank you. I'll close the public hearing at this time and turn it back to council for a motion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would move that we approve resolution number 24-04.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion on the matter?
I guess just a couple of quick comments. I find it a little odd that someone would start building a house on the lake, which we know is not going to be a cheap house, before they actually had a sewer hookup of any kind. And while Tyler says they had space for a leach field there, I'm not sure that it would be permittable at this point, given its proximity to the lake. So I just find that a little bit odd, but I think what we did at our last meeting by passing the 24-03 resolution, which means that you pay when you come in what you would have paid had you been in the city, and I think that's fine. I think we pick up what we should have gotten initially, and that's a good thing. And then, as far as the hardscape, I mean, that is not a problem. I mean, that is from Lakeshore standpoint, that would just count towards their built area within the Lakeshore Protection Zone once they came in for a dock permit or any other thing that they would do in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, so that's not an issue. And more importantly, any house we can get on sewer that's on the lake is vitally important. So that's hugely important, and I thank them for coming forward and requesting annexation, and glad we're gonna get them. And I see a construction site right across the lake from me, so there you go.
Any other comments? With that said, all those in favor? All those opposed, like sign, and the matter passes unanimously. And Tyler, just on a personal comment, I know that your clients, or they're the clients of Malmquist, I have to say that the process that they used and the thinking they used when they knew they were going to come in, and they started building anyway, knowing they were going to come in, and they still built in areas where they would not necessarily have been allowed if they would have been part of the city of Whitefish at the time of initiating construction in the city. I think the group here finds that a little disconcerting, and you might want to pass that on. Thanks.
I will do.
Thanks. Wendy.
Good evening. So the second annexation rezone request before you. This one is for Lawrence Evans. It's at 485 Armory Road. Is currently zoned Flathead County Seg 10, and they're proposing to annex into the city and be rezoned to a WCR, which the neighbors to the west have the exact same zoning. At your consent agenda 2 weeks ago, you did pass a resolution to set this public hearing. So again, the property is zone Seg 10, all the neighbors is zone Seg 10. It's surrounded by residential uses. Staff is recommending one condition of approval, that engineered plans for sewer main extension are approved by the city of Whitefish and DEQ, and that the sewer main is extended to the eastern edge of the property. This property is right on the corner of Armory Road. So Armory Road is a county maintained road, a county owned road, and it'll continue to be a county road. The subject property is not connected to any city utilities, and water is, so they're going to connect to city sewer. The land use designation for the property is rural residential, and the WCR is consistent with that rural residential designation. So the same kind of review criteria that Nelson went over, this one complies with number C, that the land use designation, or the zoning is consistent with the land use designation, which it is a rural residential, and WCR is consistent with that. So staff is recommending the council annex and rezone the subject property to a WCR, subject to the one condition of approval. So it's a little more straightforward.
Steve.
So this one also has a building already built on it, correct?
It was an existing house. Mm-hmm.
But we're not asking for the surcharge in this case to connect? Mm-hmm. Why would we not ask for the surcharge in this case? But
it's an existing structure. It's been there for years and years. It's not a new construction. I don't think that qualifies.
The surcharge only applies to new construction that's going on.
The surcharge only applies to properties that have never had a well or a septic on them. And so this property does have a current septic, and they have the option to expand that septic with the county, but they're opting to extend city sewer.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I've got a question, Wendy. We say, or in the report it says, there's no city water available.
Right, I think water is down by the Armory building.
Okay. Yet, what I'm seeing here is that at least in the agreement for annexation, we reference that water will be available. And we also leave open some numbers here, no more than blank connections to city municipal water or sanitary sewer system. the owner will be given permission to extend blank water and sanitary sewer stubs from the municipal sanitary main.
Not sure. These documents don't get submitted to me.
I know.
So that's standard in that contract, and so usually what happens is, when a petition to annex comes forward with that agreement, it's either for development or for a property that is not currently covered by, doesn't have any of those services. So we ask for that. I think one of them is the second one is for, I'm gonna say it wrong, like connection, not a connection, but, can you read my mind, Craig? It looks like, sounds like,
Like a service connection?
service connection, yeah.
So we'd fill that out. When Dana signs that document, after council approves it, we would fill it out for 0 water services and 1 sanitary sewer stub.
Okay. My question really relates to, what are we committing ourselves to? And if we're not providing water, that needs to be very clear as opposed to simply saying
Yeah,
we're going to present blank number.
It would be. What we're committing ourselves to is 1 sanitary sewer service for this property.
Okay. And not committing to, they could bring
And
water in
0
if they
water
want,
services.
but we're not offering to, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it would require, I think, almost a mile, well, not that much, probably half a mile of water main extension to get to this property, which would not be cost effective.
Giuseppe, yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This came to me as I was listening to the questions. Curious, since the buildings are already constructed, are they going to be subjected to impact fees?
They will be subjected to impact fees for the sewer connection, yes.
And maybe the water, if they disconnect the well and connect to the water?
In the future, if they connect to water, then there'd be a water impact fee as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council? We advertised for this for a public hearing, and I'd like to open the public hearing now. Any comments from the public?
Good evening, I'm Lawrence Evans, I'm the owner of 485 Armory. We are basically here because the county will not approve septic unless you deny us sewer. So that's basically our intent here.
We want you
So-
to come to the party anyway.
Right, I know, I'm
so-
sure you will this section. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
Okay, great, thanks. Come on down. Yeah. Any other public comment? Michelle, anybody online?
For those of you who are online, if you'd like to speak towards this public hearing agenda item, please raise your hand. We're good?
I'll close the public hearing at this time and turn it over to council for a motion preferably.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I move to approve the request of annexation as presented by the staff.
Do I have a second? Second by Councilor Cornell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. The matter passes unanimously. Thanks a bunch. Welcome. Next, we have communications from the Planning and Building Director. Dave. There we go.
Hi.
You don't look like Dave.
So I am bringing forward to you a lakeshore construction permit that the Lakeshore Protection Committee recommended denial on in the last December 13th meeting. They unanimously voted for denial. So what happened, I'll explain everything. So this is a boathouse repair. They are looking to repair the foundation that's failing on a existing non-conforming boathouse on Whitefish Lake. They are proposing to install 4 helical piers, which in layman's terms are giant screws that they would use as the foundation, and some concrete pads to repair the boathouse. The the Lakeshore Protection Committee was not satisfied with, at the time, the level of detail in the bid for the job, because there is a clause in the Lakeshore Protection Regulations stating that essentially if a building is just damaged more than 90% of its fair value, then it cannot be repaired. And so that was the reason why they recommended denial. So yes, so this is a grandfathered non-conforming boathouse. As far as the constructed area on the lake, every foot of lake frontage you have, you're allowed 8 square feet of constructed area. They have 70 feet of area of lake frontage, so they're allowed 560, but 686 is grandfathered in from a previous permit. As far as the evaluation criteria, so a lakeshore construction permit shall only be issued when it's found that this proposed action will not, during either its construction or its utilization, materially diminish water quality, which helical piers would not. They would remove 2 of the 3 concrete foundation walls and replace them with helical piers. It would not materially diminish habitat for fish or wildlife. They would just be removing the 2 walls. Interfere with navigation or other lawful recreation. There'd be no anticipated impacts as it's on the private property. Create a public nuisance or public safety hazard. I don't anticipate any safety hazards caused by repairing the boathouse, the foundation. Create a visual impact discordant with natural scenic values as determined by the governing body, which would be you, where such values form the predominant landscape elements. It has to comply with all the material regulations in the lakeshore construction standards. So the conditions to ensure that those conditions, criteria are met or have been put in place. I mean, technically they need to shield any concrete with wood, which the boathouse would, just by the nature of its construction. And then alter the characteristics of the shoreline. Removing 2 foundation walls would, probably create a more natural shoreline than, keeping concrete walls. So again, the material standards need to be met. And then the replacement and restoration of non-conforming structures due to fire or other natural calamity in the Lakeshore Protection Regulations. Again, they just state that essentially a non-conforming boathouse having been damaged or partially destroyed by fire or other calamity to an extent not exceeding 90% of its real value, exclusive of the foundations, at any time may be restored to its immediately previous use existing at the time of the partial destruction. And then whenever a non-conforming house or boathouse is damaged in excess of 90%, as stated above, the repair or construction shall conform to the requirements of the regulations, and boathouses are not permitted in the Lakeshore Protection Zone currently. And so the appraised value of the boathouse is $6,670. The applicant provided an estimate of $4,000 to complete the work, and that falls under 90% of the value of the valuation of the boathouse, which would be $6,003, and thus complies with Section 13-31 Z6A. So this was part of a previous lakeshore construction permit application where all the other elements of the application were recommended for approval, and the application was just amended to not go forward with the boathouse yet, because there were, at that time, I did not have a estimate of the work, and also this project does need a floodplain development permit, because it is within the 100-year floodplain. So they applied for a floodplain permit, but essentially this lakeshore construction permit would need to be obtained first before they would, even if they got a floodplain development permit, this construction permit would be required before they can get a building permit. So staff, so it does fall within the requirements of lakeshore regulations, which do allow for boathouse repair, again, under that 90% threshold. I have 29 conditions of approval. Most are standard. I included the conditions for using metal, wood, concrete, mechanical equipment, excavation in the lake. I added the conditions for non-conforming structures. which again, so essentially any non-conforming structure their use may be continued and maintained, provided there's no physical change other than the necessary maintenance and repair. And then, a permit for repair is required when, anything with structural elements or foundational components. And then a boathouse in lakeshore protection zone may not be altered or improved in any manner which may result in a change of use. So this is simply to repair the foundation. They cannot change it from, they can't make it into anything other than a boathouse.
To house a boat.
Correct. Yes. To house a boat. Open up for any question.
Any other questions from council? Yeah, Giuseppe.
Just a technical question, Nelson. At the beginning of your report, you say the Whitefish Lake Protection Committee denied it 3-1, but then when I read inside, the staff recommended with 29 conditions of approval. The Lakeshore Protection moved to deny, and they all voted unanimously.
Yes, I apologize. That was for the that was incorrect. So it was they unanimously voted to recommend denial.
Sure. Do I understand it correctly that the information the committee had at the time of the vote compared to the information you have today is different?
So that from the first time this came to the Lakeshore Protection Committee, so this application was a part of a different application in the past, and that one, yes, I didn't have the required information to recommend approval of the boathouse repair at that time. I now have information on the cost of construction, and then we have a floodplain development permit that has been submitted, which would also be required to do this project.
Ben?
I was wondering if we could talk for a second about the philosophy of the 90% rule. Where I see a reference in here, it usually comes with the word destroyed 90% or more. How do I think about that? And is this destroyed or is it being repaired?
So the foundation is failing. I included, this is a new image that the applicant shared with me today that's behind you. So the foundation walls are failing. I'm not an engineer, I don't, so that'd be a good question. I mean, I don't know if it's safe to inhabit. I don't know if it's a safe structure. Destroyed, it's from the wave action. It's not, it's not like it's been partially demolished with a sledgehammer. So the way that it reads to me is that if it's, by fire or other calamity, which would be, an act of God, another, natural occurrence, which would be, the destruction from the wave action on the lake, which is inevitable given.
So if it says fire or calamity, does it apply in this situation?
I mean, I think that was probably like a high water event where there was a storm that substantially damaged it during that event. And so, yeah, I would think that's basically how we apply this. And when we did our lakeshore regulations update, which, wasn't in effect yet when this was submitted, but we did lower that threshold to 50% from 90% to make it consistent with our floodplain regulations, which consider a 50% improvement, a substantial improvement, which is when it has to meet all the floodplain requirements. So, but this one, came in before that. It hasn't, I think it just went into effect, the new lakeshore regulations, or maybe it does on the
February 1st.
February 1st, yeah, it's coming. But anyway, so yeah, we consider any kind of a natural thing where it gets damaged, where it just starts falling in the lake, or due to a storm or whatever, a calamity.
So is the intent of our regulations that over time, these sorts of non-conforming structures disappear?
So, I mean, in the past, the Lakeshore Committee was cognizant of the fact that, having a boathouse on the lake was kind of, part of the appeal of that particular property. And so they were very reticent to reduce that threshold from 90%. They felt like unless the whole building was completely destroyed, falls in the lake, falls apart at that point, then you can't rebuild it. But, 90% is a pretty steep threshold of damage to be able to rebuild it, but that's part of the appeal on the lake. And we did reduce that because it was in conflict, because almost every boathouse is also in the floodplain, and the floodplain standards is 50%. So those two things have always clashed with each other, which is why we reduced it. But as the regulations stand right now, with that 90% threshold, that's, the intent of that was that people would be able to fix those up and maintain them as long as they could unless it completely was destroyed.
So I think you just answered this, but just philosophically, with any non-conforming structure, is the intent to allow the individual to repair it indefinitely, or is that?
I mean, basically, unless it gets, burns to the ground or something and it's
Right.
completely destroyed, yeah. That was the intent. I mean, it's gonna change a little bit with the 50% threshold, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, I can see you're poised.
Yeah, I guess just a quick question, looking at the photo in the packet and then looking at this photo, do you know if they applied for a permit for the temporary repair there with the steel posts and the new beam?
I did not get an emergency lakeshore permit, no.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just to be clear, Dave, if they came in today under the 50% rule, they couldn't rebuild.
Well, it doesn't go into effect until February, so.
I know, but
yeah.
if they came
Yeah.
under the, so.
Well, yeah, they'd have to give us estimates, and if it was more than 50% damage, then yeah.
Okay.
Or basically with that rule, they'd have to completely bring it up to code with regard to the floodplain regulations and everything else.
Right. Good. All right, thank you. All right, before I do that, any other questions from council? I think you're good. With that, this is not a public hearing. I'll turn it over to
I
council.
think Kate wanted to speak.
Oh, yeah, Kate, come on. You're right. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, I think I have this down to like 3 minutes, so
Good.
bear with me. I'm going to just kind of go through kind of the crux of this issue, and then I'm happy to address any questions that you might have. So the proposed application for Lakeshore Construction is for the completion of the repair of the structure. It is existing on the property and has been in place since 1980. It is a non-conforming structure, and the city planners have recommended approval of the application as noted in your transmittal. The owner is making every attempt to have these repairs approved through all the proper channels and does not wish to make any adjustments to the nature or use of the structure. The foundation walls of the structure have horizontal cracks which extend through the walls. I'm going to jump around because some of this doesn't make sense in the order I have it. As part of the design process in preparing the application, we did consult with Eclipse Engineering, who provided structural recommendation options for supporting the boathouse. To be as mindful of the lake and the lakeshore as possible, the most non-invasive option of repair was selected, and that is the helical piers. In using the helical piers in lieu of traditional concrete foundations or sonotubes, it's limiting the disturbance to the lakeshore protection zone. The proposed repairs will have little, if any, impact on the water quality or habitat of the lake, and nor will they have any visual impact to the shoreline of Whitefish Lake. The Lakeshore Committee's primary concern was pertaining to the validity of the cost estimate. I have requested and provided an itemized estimate of service from the contractor for your reference, and I believe he is here if you have any questions for the contractor. And in conclusion, I ask that the council to evaluate the application for its intent to repair an existing structure to promote safety and limit impact to the Lakeshore Protection Zone. The city planners have recommended approval of the application. The concerns of the committee have been addressed through the detailed estimate. The application meets all requirements of the lake and lakeshore protection regulations at the time of application. I thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Steve?
I want to piggyback on what Andy said. There's a couple photos in our packet that don't match up with this photo, that there was work done to, it looks like it was a Band-Aid, basically.
Yes.
Was there any permit applied for that work that was
I
done?
am not aware of one. I was not contacted when that work was completed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks a bunch. Now I'll turn it back to council for a motion or questions.
I would make a motion. And that would be to approve WLP 23-W22. And I'll speak to that.
Seconded by Councilor Davis. Andy?
Obviously, based on our recommendation, or our regulations, meets the 90% threshold pretty easily, I think. You look at the structure's obviously in pretty good shape other than the foundation. It's not decrepit and falling apart, and I'm happy to see the photos inside that it actually has boats in it, because some of them don't anymore. So I think they're trying to do the right thing. This photo does disappoint me considerably, though, and I think we should look at possibly citing them for that. That would be my one suggestion, that we turn that over to the prosecutor and have them take a look at it, because it is work that was done without a permit, and quite frankly, that offends me, and I think that's wrong, and those are the kind of things we need to crack down on.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously. And I hope that Michelle, you'll take that back to the prosecutor and ask them to take a look at this. Thank you. All right, on to communications from our Public Works Director, Craig.
Yes, good evening, council. So this is the Safe Streets for All grant, which we were awarded last year, which will fund a comprehensive safety plan for our street system. Completion of this plan will allow us to apply for future construction grants. Such projects could include street design changes with multimodal improvements, signage enhancements, speed management and traffic calming projects. Basically anything that will make our transportation system safer for motorists and pedestrians. So in accordance with your consultant selection policy, we did advertise for proposals back in November. Council appointed myself and Karen Hilding on the rating panel, and myself and Karen with Rebecca Norton on the selection panel. We only received one response to the RFP, which was RPA. And we interviewed them back in December, on December 11th. Upon completion of the interview, it was the unanimous opinion of the selection panel that we contract with RPA to complete this plan. As usual, they showed a clear understanding of the city's needs for this plan, and they've demonstrated their ability through numerous successful past planning efforts. The current budget for this plan is $200,000. That will be funded by a $160,000 grant and $40,000 in city cash. So it is the Public Works Department's recommendation that we contract with RPA to complete the plan, and the city manager be authorized to execute it.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig? Steve?
Quick question. So we're paying not just for the plan, right? We're paying for the work to be done too?
Nope, this is just the planning effort. Once the plan is completed and adopted by council, we can then apply for future construction grants.
And how much is the
It was
$200,000?
estimated to be a $200,000 plan. Yeah, that the state is paying 80% of.
I guess I'm in the wrong profession. I mean, I've known that for a long time, but and what do we get with the plan? Do we get technical drawings and all that stuff, or?
Yeah, we'll get conceptual level project plans that we can then move forward and use in, future grant applications. So it'll basically dissect the city into our typical 3 quadrants, north, east, and west. We'll be looking at safe routes to school. We'll be looking at projects that are highlighted in the transportation plan and moving those forward to kind of the next level as to how to actually build them.
Okay. It just seems like a lot of money for a plan to me, but it is what it is.
Any other questions for Craig? Craig, and this is just my little thing. What do we mean by intermodal?
Multimodal. So
What do we need by
multimodal,
inter or multi? You know.
essentially, bicyclists and pedestrians, walking and biking,
No horses? Oh, okay.
perhaps horses.
Yeah, maybe. They promised that on the trail too, and I didn't get that. So there you go.
Yeah.
Counselor Davis.
Would you like a motion?
I would.
I would move to approve the awarding of the engineering contract for Safe Streets for All safety plan to RPA as presented by staff.
I'll second it.
Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussions? All those in favor? That matter passes unanimously. There's nobody objecting. With that said, we'll move on to communications from our police chief. Bridger.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. Tonight, I get to bring forth the consideration to approve the School Resource Officer Program agreement between the city and the Whitefish School District on page 268 of your packet. My staff report. Basically, the history of this is last year, budget year, we approved the addition of the 19th officer, and the plan from the get-go was to put that officer as a school resource officer. We did apply for and received a COPS grant through the Department of Justice. We notified of that in November. And so this is kind of following through with that plan. The school district has reviewed the agreement and has signed it. This will add a second school resource officer to our current program. Right now, our school resource officer sees all 3 schools, and we also lend them out to the community, the daycares, pre-K, and the Christian Academy as well, if they have any concerns or presentations that they require from the police department. So with the Whitefish Middle School being kind of out on its own from the other 2 school campuses, which are in close proximity, this officer will be primarily focused at the Whitefish Middle School to provide that school with safety and security. Attached to this, that grant that we received is a 3-year grant totaling $125,000. Separated in the financial requirement here, you can see the separation for that with the school district forking the fund for the remainder, and the 4th year requirement will be split 50-50 between the city and the district, and that is how our current SRO is funded as well. We split that cost. The agreement is attached, and I'd like to recommend that the council approve the agreement.
Any questions for Bridges? Yes, Steve.
Just a quick question. So by year 4, we'll be paying half of a second resource officer. Is that
That's correct.
accurate? Okay. And the resource officer gets paid, or the cost, the overall cost of having another resource officer is $90,000. Is that correct? Roughly?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. Just want to point out that that's $90,000 for a person that's out there protecting our children compared to what we're paying for a study of our city. Anyway, just thought that might.
Well
provide
worth it,
some
money well spent.
insight. Yeah, I agree with you. It should be more.
Any other questions for Bridget? 0.18. Not seeing any more questions for Bridger. I'll take a motion if anybody wants.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'd love to move to approve the agreement.
There a second? Motion made and seconded. Any other further discussion? Giuseppe?
Yes, just a comment. After retirement, I started subbing at the school system, and I've spent time with our resource officer, and mostly I'm all down, but I can tell you, the place that needs one is the middle school.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. Matter passes unanimously, Michelle. And on from there, we go to communications from our acting city manager, Michelle.
Do any of you have questions regarding my report that I've included in the packet? Okay. I do have a couple of things that I do want to touch base on. I do want to remind you, if you have not yet, if you have the ability to attend the ICS 402 training, either in Kalispell on the 24th at 9 a.m., or Tuesday here at City Hall on the 23rd at 5 p.m. Please register through the link that's provided there. The Flathead County Emergency Services is the one that's taking all those reservations. We also will have some staff joining those. Some of our department directors will be joining and attending that training also. And then I'd also like to thank our staff. That includes police, fire to ensure our safety, our public works and parks and rec for clearing streets and paths, and all the other staff that came into City Hall or worked remotely during the frigid weather last week to ensure that business runs as usual. As we all know, we just don't get to take off just because it's bad weather. So I appreciate all of our staff for coming in and working through that time.
Great.
And that's all I have.
That wasn't a thinly veiled jab at the public school system, was it, Michelle?
No, not at all.
It could have been, no.
It would be if the mountain was open.
Yeah. Let's move on to considerations of approval of an award of a consultant contract for the fiscal year 24 wage market study.
Okay. Sherry is attending online, but I will present her report tonight. In the fiscal year 24 City of Whitefish budget, the city approved funds to hire a consultant to complete the FY24 wage market study. Human Resources provided a draft RFP for consultant services for City Council review and received direction to proceed with the RFP as presented with the proposed project scheduled. The RFP for services and legal advertisement were completed in November and December of 2023, with proposals due by December 14th, 2023. The project is important to ensure, as an employer, the city is proactively addressing compensation and cost of living issues that make it extremely difficult to recruit and retain our most valuable asset and our employees. Or I guess that is our employees. Sorry about that. Whitefish competes directly with other local communities and employers, both public and private, who have adjusted their wage structure over the past few years based on the high cost of living here in the Flathead, specifically in Whitefish and our neighboring cities, Columbia Falls and Kalispell. We have struggled to recruit many of our positions over the last 2 years and have lost several highly qualified candidates for positions due to the housing market and general comparison of cost of living to wage received, even with offering one of the best employee benefit packages compared to like entities. Human Resources will work directly with the consultant to coordinate communications, collaborate, and provide required data, guidance, and direction to ensure all City of Whitefish positions, including union and non-union, are included in the project, with the result incorporating our existing wage matrix and classification system. The city received proposals from 4 firms for the project. All proposals were impressive and clearly demonstrated each consultant's ability to complete the work. The rating panel scored all firms and invited the top 3 to interview. Communications and Management Services, LLC, CMS, Baker Tilly, and Gallagher. Interviews were held on January 4th, 2024. The interview committee, consisting of Director of Human Resources Baccaro, Acting City Manager Hauk, and Deputy Mayor City Councilor Sweeney. The FY24 budget for the project is $40,000 and is funded under General Fund Human Resources Administration Fund. While all firms were clearly qualified for the job, it is the unanimous recommendation of the Interview Selection Committee that we work with CMS for the fiscal year 24 wage market study services. We were extremely impressed with the level of effort CMS put into their proposal, the thought-provoking conversation that was had at the interview, their inspirational ideas they came up with, and they are a Montana-based firm located in Helena, providing a personal recognition, knowledge, and understand our unique challenges here in Whitefish, the Flathead Valley, in Montana. Based on the information, it is the recommendation of staff that the city manager be authorized to negotiate and execute a contract with communication and management services for FY24 wage market study project. And we can answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Michelle? Sherry, you have any comments?
No, Michelle did a great job,
As usual.
of course.
Thanks. No questions from council. I would appreciate a motion.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would go ahead and move to authorize our city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with Communication and Management Services LLC for our fiscal year 24 wage market study project.
Motion is made and seconded. Any further comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? All those opposed, like sign. That matter passes unanimously. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
And Sherry, thank you. Just on a back note, I was, as Michelle, I was on that group that interviewed the booth. These folks are going to do a great job, and I think they do have the local knowledge that I think we need. And the nice thing about these guys, in addition to doing most of this stuff, is going to be remote. With them being in Helena, we will have an opportunity for face-to-face, and so that'll be, again, an added value, I think, to all of the employees in the city. So there you go. With that said, we're now down to communications from the mayor and city councilors. We have a consideration for appointment for the Impact Fee Committee, and I would appreciate a motion if there is any.
Move to approve, to appoint Michael Hine to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? He's appointed. Thanks, unanimously. We also have a letter from Shelter Whitefish regarding the ADUs. Do we want to discuss that now or take it under advisement?
I think that, we need to just sit tight and wait and see what happens in the courts. I don't think it doesn't benefit us one way or another to get involved and to wade into this mess, and let the courts figure out the injunction and all that stuff, and we'll just continue on with our ordinance the way it is. I don't think we're gaining anything by going back and trying to reinstitute what we had before we changed the rules because of the law. I think it's going to get resolved in timely enough fashion that we can just wait.
I would concur.
I concur.
Andy? Okay. Good. Having taken care of that, now any councilor comments? I'll start with you, Giuseppe. Anything this evening? Steve? Ben?
Can I make a comment on Snow Lot?
Sure.
I'm gonna make a comment on Snow Lot.
The
I know we're gonna talk about this again, but I've been thinking about this for a little while, so I'll just say a few thoughts about it. What has it been, 4 or 5 years ago, or whatever it was, we started the design process on this Snow Lot. And 6, I don't remember, a couple years ago. It was a very thoughtful design. I thought we went through a very good community process to establish what our needs are, what the project is. I think it's a well-designed project. I think it was presented to the council at the time. There was a budget presented to the council at the time. That budget said we needed $3 million and a piece of land. And this council looked at it and said, yeah, that's a really significant community need. In exchange, for the $3 million in the land, we would get townhomes that are affordable to the average person in town, which is what we really, really need. So a couple years go by. And I can tell you from personal experience that the cost of construction has changed drastically in the last few years. And so it is of no surprise to me that we are having this conversation now, that the original budget and assumptions that we had when we started this project are no longer viable. There's not enough money to build the 100 AMI average person's townhomes that we had anticipated we would get out of this. That's nobody's fault, honestly. It's just the way the world is. And I think we're not alone. Every affordable housing project in the United States probably has this problem right now. Cost of construction's gone up everywhere. I am remiss to not mention that I do think we are in a little bit of a tough situation here because this project has already started. And I think that this conversation would have been better had a year ago, when we could much more easily change the path of this project, as we have discussed in the meeting before. But that's already been done. So what do we do now? Now we have, we started off as a 100 AMI project. That translates to something around $300,000 a townhome. Now it's $450,000 a townhome. If we get the Community Land Trust donation, which we could, and I completely agree with your comments about we need to get that committed, it becomes a $400,000 townhome. It's still, the AMI ranges that that 130, so that's 135 AMI. That is still unaffordable to a significant percentage of the community. And I am feeling like we are stuck in a situation where we don't have a lot of great options here. We have, the project is underway. It's a good project. It's badly needed. We need it. The community needs it really badly. It's not, the proposal we have is not meeting the AMI targets that we wanted. I'm not sure if this budget that was in front of us now was presented to us 4 years ago or whatever it was. I'm not even sure it would have been approved in this way, or at least the project would have been reconsidered in a different way, maybe, I don't know. But we are where we are, and we have to decide what to do. I mean, I think that as bad as all of that sounds, I will also say that a $400,000 townhome of that size, type, and location is absolutely not available anywhere in this town. I mean, there are people who probably would love to buy a $400,000 townhome in this community that would not otherwise be able to do so. So I do think there is some benefit that comes of it, even though it's not as much as we would have liked. So I don't know. I feel like I need some time to think about it. I'm glad we're waiting. I'm not saying what to do because I still feel like I wanted to hear what everybody else's options, thoughts, and ideas are. I don't think we have a lot of great options. I think the project is more expensive than it is when it started, and I think the community needs it, and those two things are the same. So anyway, those are my thoughts on where we are, and I look forward to discussing it further.
Thanks, Ben. Andy?
Couple comments. One about garbage. Because we do have on our city website, we do have a garbage click link and to have any notices about garbage. And there's two things that I think we should put on there when we can. One, what holiday schedules are. Particularly in the winter, watching my neighbors drag their carts up and down the hill, which is not an easy thing to do and it's slippery. Or when we get a week like this, when we haven't had our trash picked up all week since Friday, but no word, and our cans are still out there full. So I think my neighbors are, when are they gonna come pick up the trash? I go, I don't know, it's for public services, who knows? So anyway, we should request of them that they notify us that, give us those holiday schedules, put that on the website so people can just click on that link and just go, hey. And I know they've had drivers sick. I think they've had 2 trucks down this week, and I know they've had a bunch of issues with the weather, and that's fine, but people just kind of need to know, and particularly if it happens when, you know, carts are out there and bears are still running around and people overfill them and don't close the lid like they're supposed to. So anyway, that's one thing. Second thing, I know we had a lot of discussion about the viaduct earlier, and Giuseppe was not happy with what we were talking about for viaduct improvements, and Mr. Doug Adams didn't like the elimination of the slip lane, but as I was coming here tonight and making a left turn onto Railway and watching someone trying to go up the hill across the slip lane, which is total grease right now. I watched people slide through there, I watched people go all the way across, and this poor person barely stood up the entire way across there. So if we can just throw a little gravel in there when the gravel truck goes out, because it's dangerous. I mean, you know, cars are coming in there fast and somebody's gonna get taken out, like I've always said. I say this every year, when the river freezes, people, please have your kids be careful. Lost a few kids in the country this last week in states where people actually know a lot about ice, and the river looks pretty good today, but when it warms up to 35 next week, it won't be good. It goes out quickly, and the lake's probably pretty safe right now. It froze pretty hard, and I saw some tents out there, and those guys have big drills, and they generally don't put their tents up where there's less than 4 inches of ice, so. But it only been frozen a few days, and I saw people ice skating all the way out in the middle of the lake, and you know, you might want to be a little careful, and I just worry that some point, someday, we're gonna have a problem, and that would be super unfortunate. So anyway, that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Andy. I only have a couple of comments, and this is for general consumption. We did have a work session earlier on Whitefish housing for the snow lot, or the, what are the Depot Park townhomes now. And what we agreed earlier was, Ben has been thinking about it and been involved in these kinds of discussions for a long time, and he wanted to have us say the night, what we agreed was that we were going to wait as a collective to absorb all the information, unpleasant, most of it, that we received this evening, and consult with our city manager and before we made any decision or direction back to staff or to the WHA. Just for public service, this is not going away, and we all recognize that this is a really important project for the city, and the commitment that we made, and where I think the group here wants to make sure that whatever direction we give is consistent with what we promised the community and what we hope to be able to give them. So with that, I think we're adjourned. Thanks a bunch, everybody.